Drop me a little late. Gail, is that what I just want to jump in whenever?
Okay, right.
So,
We have a form.
yep.
Dr. T and Andrew,
Gail,
we are
yeah.
now live. We are now live.
Woo-hoo.
Great.
Echo.
Thank you. Hi, Melissa.
Hello.
My life for you, it's not late.
Down.
Oh, it's not.
You go to get Shiloh. Was it good?
That's it, see. Yeah, it was awesome.
He's a good kid.
Great.
It is Josh Collins.
He's gonna zoom in, but he said he's gonna be late, so I just said, we're gonna start without him and.
I just need a time, so when he pops.
Yep.
August.
How much stuff this kid lost?
Time's over. You do that too. I'm dead.
Oh, I'm not a big shopper.
I shouldn't. You
Yeah, pretty impressive, actually. It's good marketing.
I got like 9 of them.
Also, there's just probably 3 of us, Josh, to be in and out, so it's gonna be a lot of first and seconds. How to go on tonight, so. If there's a chance. I've been interested.
I was there a couple of weeks ago. We were working on this.
Oh, yeah. More names? Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so we're.
I'm not going to get rid of that.
Now we'll be our.
I know, I know. Is it really?
Yes, not cheap.
What is it, 120?
299. 299. Yeah. Let's put new furniture in. New. Oh,
How much you guys?
299.
You're doing like an Airbnb. Have you done that before?
No, this is the first chance. My son owns this condo and we just bought it.
Yeah.
And we put all new, I just put carpet in it today, new appliances, not put a lot of money in. it. But minimum 6 people, no snow, no animals, dogs, pets. 2 night minimum. Yeah, days running next month, so. We'll see how it does in December, but it's like 40.
Right.
Yeah, so, but it'll be okay.
You have like a cleaning company for the boy.
My wife.
Sure.
Yeah, we have,
Yeah, it's pretty dry.
we have a feed built in, so.
Iowa City's pretty dry and everything. So I'll cover that.
So when we're gone this winter, she can fill out there now.
It's not rain. All the day, but else.
Yeah, a lot of big ways out that.
Yeah, I know, that's what everybody said, but I guess ours.
I think it's.
All right, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call.
Josh is not present.
Tyler's absent. Jeff,
Yep.
Melissa.
Yep.
Andrew.
Yep.
And we have part of this tonight.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda passes. Public forum. Do we have anyone here to speak for public forum? Gail, you've heard from anybody? No one? All right, moving along. Christine from New Mexico, oral reports. Announcements and celebrations.
Thank you very much. Thank you for also welcoming me on Zoom. I appreciate that very much. It's just a mere 105 degrees here today, so nice and balmy. So we're excited about that. Just real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to our spring or summer, actually, sports of baseball and softball. We had a wonderful season. The Gilbert baseball team finished the 23 season with a record of 18 games to 13. And the Tigers lost in the sub-state final. They were only one game away from making it to the state tournament again. And Gilbert was led by a great senior class, had many highlights throughout this season, including winning the first two sub-state games against Humboldt and Algona. They competed very well and really in a loaded conference. And also we are excited because they also beat Ames High at a home game. That was senior night, so that was exciting. And we want to congratulate senior Eli Eldred. He was selected to play in the state all-star game in Iowa City at the end of July. So congratulations to the baseball team, to their coaching staff, and as well as the seniors and Eli Eldred for that big honor. In addition to that, we had a good season of softball for our girls. They had a wonderful season. They finished the year with a record of 17-14, and that the Gilbert softball team was ranked for the first time in school history. So that's exciting. And they also, the Tigers advanced the sub-state final for the first time ever. The season was highlighted by wins over many wonderful opponents, beating Bondurant and for the first time in 17 years. So that's a big celebration. And also, they had great community support at their home playoff game against Mason City. And we had amazing seniors on that team. We look forward to next season, and we want to congratulate Coach Sneezek and the rest of the coaching staff and our seniors there. So congratulations to both our baseball, softball teams as they have wrapped up for this season. And we're excited about that. Yeah, that's what I have for announcements and celebrations. If you want me to, I'll just go right into department updates. Is that fine? The next piece I want to just mention is you can see in the department updates, summer does not slow down in the school district while our kids are at home and families enjoying what they're doing there. There's a lot taking place. I want to thank Vic Vanderpool, Jason Holton, and the principals had a big part in that. We received a grant through our security assessment for $194,000 where we're upgrading our cameras throughout the district, and it'll be a real addition to the safety and security of the district. And I want to thank them for all their hard work. That has been quite complex. It's been working through Homeland Security. It's been pretty intense, and they were able to jump through all those important things to make that happen for us. So we're very, very excited. We had some school districts who started opting out of even participating in the grant because the amount of work that was involved in getting the funding for the district. So I congratulate them on their perseverance and how it'll help us with our safety. So those you can see in the other updates. I'm very thankful to our maintenance for all the work they've been doing all summer long. There's a video out today of the new floor at the middle school and how great that looks. So lots of wonderful projects happening around the district. So we're ready for kids when they come back in August. So lots of celebration and hard work in all the areas. So thank you.
Any questions for Dr. Trujillo on the department updates? Hearing none, I'm going to go along to board reports. Another reminder, these 2023 school board elections will be held November 7th. Candidates need to have their names, they can begin filing on August 28th. They can pick up that paperwork at the district office.
Yes, in the district office, and the timelines and information will be on the internet, and it will be blasted out in different ways and different forms. But as we get closer, it'd probably be the first week, end of July or first week in August, we'll start pushing that information out.
And then the deadline to have your name filed as a candidate is September 21st at 5 p.m. Reminder, we have 4 terms up. My term, Tyler Holt's term, and Jeff Mosman's term. Those are all 3 of those are 4-year terms. And we have a 2-year term with Melissa being appointed here. So her term was up as well with a 2-year term, and then again, 3 4-year terms. So we'll have 4 open
That's
positions,
considered a vacancy.
vacancies.
So, and that's a 2-year term. And you can pick up the information for, again, filing on the 28th, which does consist of signatures, you have to have signatures, and then return that by Thursday, September 1st.
And how many signatures again is that?
I believe it's 50.
50. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Lastly, we have, geez, 78th annual IASB convention is gonna be held November 15th through 17th. I assume it's in Des Moines like it always is. So just to get that on the calendars. All right, facilities reports. Joe? You've got the floor.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yo, did you have the PDF I sent?
I do.
So we've been meeting as a facilities committee with a couple members of the board and Dr. Curio, and looking at what does this master plan look like from a schedule standpoint, and understanding what we've learned from last month's plan of finance provided by Piper Sandler, and how the funding analysis looks like for phases 1, 2, and total. And so from that information, we put together a preliminary schedule for each piece of the master plan. And hopefully we can find that to share here.
Are you talking about the schedule?
Yes.
And I think we have it there.
So this is the schedule. I want to start here, Gail. There's 9 pages here. I'm going to come back to this at the end. This is kind of an overview schedule that shows each aspect of the master plan we've been talking about over the last several months. With a real focus for phase 1 on the PK2 primary school. And so you can see approximately, can you actually go back to the slide before this? The very first slide. There we go. So you can kind of see how each of these portions of the project could overlap from phase 1 to phase 2. The top one and basically the first part of the scope would be the PK2 primary. Also the middle school secure entrance, and both of those we're showing as a preliminary schedule to start in Q3 of this year, ahead of an anticipated November bond. And then after that bond, the other aspects of the phase 1 parts of this project that we've discussed would fall in sequence. So design work would begin right after that bond in the event that it was voted to approve. So that would be the high school science locker room, training room, and gymnasium, new admin, and a new transportation hub. Those ones, transportation hub is still a little bit in flux on where that might go and if that would be a part of the admin. So right here, it's shown as 2 different projects. And then the new 6-lane track and field, which is more flexible. And then at the bottom, you can see in Q3 of 2026, that would be the phase 2 portions of the funding. And so that's the intermediate classroom addition to this building. And then the middle school band, classroom addition, gymnasium commons. And there's a note on there that says phase 2 design could begin sooner. And that's really dependent on how does the funding look from Piper Sandler at that point, after all the dust settles from the previous projects and we know where we're sitting on funding. If it made sense to do the design work earlier, get some bids out, get real numbers earlier, that is an option. So can we go to the second page real quick? This is a breakdown.
Which one do you want?
Which one do you want? It's middle schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually not in the right order. I apologize.
Right.
If you go to, it's actually the last page. This is showing the PK2 elementary school. And again, that's if design work would begin now. In July, you can see the red bar, November, that's the bond, and then the black bar, that's the holidays where there's just not a whole lot of work happening. So if you look at that design window, we're looking at about a 7-month design window, about 2 months for pre-construction services. So that would be bidding, establishing contracts, getting shop drawings reviewed ahead of a spring construction start. Now, highlighted on all of these are the summer months, because we've talked about trying to schedule these projects to get into good bidding windows, and that is a big concern. But probably more so is scheduling it so that it doesn't affect school operations. And each of these, this project right here, the PK2, doesn't really have a huge impact on schools because it's going to be a brand new building adjacent to an existing school. Some of these, though, for example, the building we're in right now, the intermediate, when we construct this addition out front, when you tie in, that needs to be outside of the school months. So really trying to schedule this around targeting summer months for those portions of construction. You want to go up a slide? This is transportation hub. Again, this is probably a lower priority compared to the PK2 and the secured entrance at the middle school. So we say design work could begin right after November bond. That would lead into spring construction. So the construction windows for those 2 projects would be concurrent. Obviously, this is a smaller project, so we see that ending spring of 25.
This isn't contingent upon any bonding though.
The transportation hub, I believe the funding is district funds for the administration building and the transportation.
So that's not subject to any bonding.
That one would be supplied with cash, not bonding. All of these, we just decided, since the PK2 is kind of the primary concern for the bond, that was the one where we put most of the focus. And again, these schedules, we can move them as needed, Jeff. And also, when you're looking at the transportation hub and the admin center, there's no real definite window that we need for that other than what the current needs are. So Christine has mentioned that the admin is really starting to outgrow its footprint. So that probably takes a priority with the transportation hub. But for right now, like I mentioned, these are all shown basically to start design work after the bond to make sure there's funding for it, but they could be adjusted. The construction window and the design window are about what they need to be, but they can slide on a calendar as needed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't think it needs to be in this timeline. Because if we're already outgrowing the administrative building, then do it now, because we're gonna pay cash anyway. And we have 13 acres out there where we're gonna put it, and we need a hub for our buses, same thing. I don't understand why we're delaying it on a 7-month design period when, quite frankly, in 7 months, you guys could all be out there.
And I think that's a fair point. And when we're looking at this administrative center and the transportation hub, one of the concerns we currently have is not definite on where that's going to go. We've got a few ideas that we put out there through master planning. We've talked about over by the middle school, we've talked about south of the high school. That facilities committee that's meeting, we haven't locked it in stone yet. And so that's kind of the preliminary decision that needs to happen. So we're working through a few different options to vet that out. And then this could take a priority.
Well, I guess that's a board thing then, right? That we need to say where it's gonna be so that they can go.
Yeah, I think it needs to be discussion board.
Well, we'll do it next month for you.
But I also, in my mind though, too, I want to wait for this bond to pass before we do
It's got
anything.
nothing to do with the bonding.
I know it doesn't, but I'm
It's
just
got
saying,
nothing to do with it.
I totally agree, but I don't think we go build.
We
a
got
building.
we got 2 guys out in the, what is that thing out there, the
Concessions.
concession stand,
I would agree, but I
you know,
just,
it's got nothing to do with it, so. Let's put it on, let's do this, I mean, we might not agree, but let's do this, let's put it on August and see if we can solve it.
I think if I may weigh in here,
Yeah.
I think putting it on an agenda for August to just have the conversation, look at what the options are, see where we are, whether as a board, if you decide, let's make a decision in August, or if you say, let's wait, I mean, you guys can decide that, but let's give, I'd feel comfortable in doing our best to give you the facts of what the options are so that you guys can have that conversation and decide what your next steps would be around it.
that works.
Okay, we'll move on to a different aspect of the plan.
Hey, real quick, Joe, just so people are aware, could we, just because I know Josh and Tyler are both gone, and they're both on the facilities committee, Christine, can you hit on just real quick, who makes up that committee that's meeting weekly?
Yes, I will be happy to share that. So, and just to give context to that meeting, we just started these every other week meeting Thursday mornings. And it is Tyler, governing board member Tyler Holk and Josh Bennett that are on that committee as the facilities, they're on the facilities committee, so that made sense there. I joined those meetings. Gail has joined those meetings. Of course, we have Joe and Courtney are part of those meetings, just making sure we're all moving forward. I've recently added Vic Vanderpool, based on his role to that meeting, as well as I just asked Troy Banning to join those meetings because he'll be key in the explaining all the pieces related to what's happening out to the community. So I want him to know everything about that. So if we could, I believe that's the team at the moment. And if we need to modify or change that as we move forward, I think that's something we can always look at. But already I think we've had 2 meetings. I feel like we've jumped leaps and bounds in a good way of things moving forward. So I'm glad we're meeting like that. And then I think the important part is sharing those notes out to all of the board members after those meetings. So everyone is in the loop because I want to make sure everyone's getting the same information.
Thank you, Christine. I just want to make sure I hit on that quick before Joe got going here. So back to you, Joe.
Sounds good. Are we good for this one? Want to go to the next page?
Sure.
Can I go up a page, Gail, please? One more. So this is the middle school secured entrance. And Jeff, this one specifically, we looked at design work could begin before the bond because it's a higher priority and somewhat of a simpler project that I gotta have construction through 2024. Obviously, it's going to tie into the existing building, so that construction window needs to be completed before the school year, the fall of 24. Okay.
That's different funding too, though, isn't that? Then we get some money from the state for that.
So the middle school,
Stuff funding.
that's some cash, some geo, some safe.
Okay.
Okay. You want to go up a slide, Joe? So this is the new track and field. Again, this one is preliminarily showing to start design work after a bond is passed, with a completion in the fall of 24. And this one could also be adjusted as needed. And then the last, this is the last of phase 1. The last of phase 1 is the high school science lab, locker room, training and gym edition. Obviously, we've got multiple points where we're adding on to the buildings. We have tie-ins, but we also have renovations within the science rooms. So we're looking at about a 7-month design window starting after a bond would pass. You're going into pre-construction in the summer of 24, working through the summer of 25, and then you can see there July through August of 25. That's really the critical time to tie in, renovate, and make sure it's ready for the 2025 school year. So then moving into phase 2, that gets into the intermediate building, which is this one. 7-month design window again, and about 2 months for pre-construction services. That one, we're looking to try to wrap up construction in the summer of 2028. This is probably going to be a more challenging project just because the building is existing. We're tying in, there's a little bit of topography change up north, and also we're going to take away that drive lane up north too. So there's a little bit more moving parts with this, but just targeting that 2028 summer completion. And then the middle school band, classroom, gym, commons edition. This is like the high school. It's got additions in multiple different areas. Looking at starting design work in the fall of 26, and then trying to complete that summer of 28, because that's where you can do the tie-ins and make sure it's not affecting the school year. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and obviously once you get into construction and you start seeing some of those actual costs from phase 1, it could affect things, but from just a preliminary high level, this is kind of what we're discussing in that group.
Any questions?
So I have, yeah, I'm gonna say something. I talked to Christine. And I've asked her to, so we can go talk to the guy at Piper. We're gonna get another bump everybody's valuations went up in value. And I want to meet with, what's the hell's his name?
Travis.
Travis. Because I want to know when that new evaluation money is going to hit the board.
Mhm.
Because what I'm hearing is there's going to be another 30% bump in the land prices. On lot prices and evaluations coming right behind it. So I think it would make a difference in our schedule. We could maybe tighten the schedule up a little bit.
Yeah, do you want to go back to the first slide, Joe?
And that's, but we've got to, we've got to look at when we're going to get the dollars in from the new dollars, because everybody's valuations went up, right? So when do we see those dollars? And then the land, then what I've been told is the land prices are going to go next. So, we're going to get the increase and then we're going to get an increase, but when do we get those dollars? So that could shorten that window up a little bit.
Yeah, and that kind of relates to this first page again, Jeff, because for phase two, if it makes sense and there's money in the coffers to go ahead and start design work for phase two early because of reasons like
Yeah.
that, then we can get earlier bids out in hopes that we're getting lower costs for construction.
There's flexibility in that.
I think so. On that second one, yeah.
And we've kind of always seen that, which is good.
And if you recall, we heard that from Travis previously as well, that as things are changing in a more in a positive way, that second part of the timeline could be moved up more quickly. So we'll look forward to that and hope to be able to do that.
Melissa, any questions for you? You, Joe? I don't have anything. I said you guys are meeting on a weekly basis now, it sounds like. And Christine, you said you'll send updates out after those meetings.
Yes, I believe CMBA has been creating those minutes and then we're sending those out, and then I'll continue to send that out to all of us. So everyone has that information. The only thing I'd like to share with the other board members is that if you read something that doesn't make sense or is confusing or you have questions about, feel free to reach out to any committee member. But also, of course, you can always reach out to me. I'd be happy to go through it.
Good. And you met with Tyler and Andrew, right? So you'll get some notes out on that meeting?
No, that one wasn't, that one, yeah, those notes were more just about what the next phases look like. It wasn't a committee meeting, I'd say, but yeah, Chad and I met with Joe, what was that, 2 months ago? Maybe a
Yeah,
month
maybe
ago?
1 month ago.
Yeah, a month ago.
Yeah.
So
Well, maybe you can send some to us
Yeah.
about the meeting.
Yeah,
it wasn't really about any facilities, more stuff. It was more just along the lines of what next phases look like, what's the steps, what's needed from us, what can you do? And then that was kind of from that meeting, it's kind of, we came up with this weekly meeting with facilities.
Okay.
It's kind of what came out of it,
Mhm.
so.
Okay,
Anything else?
thanks.
Christine, anything from you? Thank you very much, Joe.
You bet.
All right, next item for possible action is we gotta discuss the project delivery method. Christine, do you want to hit on this, or Joe, you can hit on this at all, or is it all you, Christine?
Sure. So you have in front of you 3 options that in moving forward in this project is deciding what direction we want to go to as a group to get all this work done, because it's a big project. There'll be a lot of moving parts, and what does that look like? So the 3 options, which I appreciate how this was put together very clearly to help us make a decision about, do we want to do design, bid and build, or the construction manager at risk, or the construction manager agency. What I will share with you, just a couple little points. One is the construction manager at risk, if you remember, is very new to the state of Iowa. It's been, I believe, just over a year that it's been in place. So it's not something that's been vetted for years and years and years in the state of Iowa. I know in other states it has been, but I just like to point that out. The second one there is construction manager agency. I think most of us are fairly familiar with that model. And it lists there, I'm not going to get into it. You can read those details about how it helps us stay on track, hold people accountable, and of course, being good stewards of our dollars all the way along the way. Now, what I want to share with you today is just that in that committee meeting, the recommendation coming out of the committee to the board is that we look at moving forward with the construction manager agency model, that we have had experience with it in the past, that with this scope of project being so large, that it's important that we have the help to be able to do all the different pieces that need to be done to make sure the work gets done and done well. And that is the recommendation out of that committee. The board can take that recommendation or do something different. In addition to that, I just want to add, in that committee, we had a discussion about, do we just move forward with maybe one? We've done a lot of work with De Novo, and are we ready to move forward with them as a construction manager agency, or do we want to give some opportunity with the other, maybe other groups that are out there that maybe we've had experience with or not? One of the things, just to follow up, I've had a conversation on what is something like that cost. It is not cheap. It is a service that you're paying for. It's a professional service that you're paying for. I do think that we need to have a conversation about the cost and what that looks like. And that's something, if we bring in 3, we can talk to the 3 about what they bring to the table and what their cost involves, so that we are clear on what we're getting and what it's costing, and no pun intended, at what cost. You know, what are we willing to do to make it happen so that we are getting the best product for our families? So that's my recommendations from the committee, my own recommendation as well, the construction manager agency, and bringing, I'd say 3 at the most to the table to have a conversation around, what do you offer? Why should we pick you? And what's it going to cost us? Because I think we should at least have the conversation before we go to just one group, because it could be very expensive. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, the best that I can, and hopefully Joe can chime in as well.
Christine, thank you. Appreciate the recommendation. I guess I'll open up here for the table. What questions you have for Christine or for Joe on these delivery?
What do you see normally as a cost on this?
It's a service base, so it's going to be a percentage of construction. And in a lot of ways, it's well worth it. I mean, traditionally, it always used to be design, bid, build. And the problem there is, anytime that there's an error or omission with the documents or unforeseen, there's a lot of change orders coming your way. It's also just a little more difficult because they're not in on the front end like a construction manager would. So if you had a construction manager come on board through design, they can help provide cost estimates all the way through design, make sure you're on track so you don't have a huge over budget issue where you're trying to make a project work that came in $5 million over budget. So as far as a cost, I think, like Christine said, you're going to have to talk with a few different construction managers, understand how they charge, but I think it's a service that the whole industry is moving towards. And like Christine said, CM at Risk is pretty new for Iowa. I'm working on another project with it right now, and there's a learning curve. And CM agency's been around longer. There's more contractors that can perform it, because CM at Risk, you also have to be able to self-perform some of the construction work. CM agency, you're managing all the contractors. So that was the direction that the facility came out with, and I would support it from my side of the table. But as far as costs, I think you're just going to have to interview and ask.
And if I may jump in here on the cost, I did a little research earlier today in regards to the area of cost. It is not cheap. And one of the things that that was shared with me is that it can look like 10% of the project, which is a big number when you're talking about $55 million. However, I was also told sometimes people say, oh, well, we're just going to bill you per hour, per leader, per group, a construction person, or this person, and it's by hour. And in the end, that comes back around pretty much around 10%, but there tends to not be a huge difference between the two different models of how they charge. But it'll be interesting to ask those questions about, what does cost look like with your organization? What's the cap? What's the, how does that work? Because I think that's an important point. But to give it some context, Jeff, that was one that I was told is a fairly common industry standard, is about 10%. And I'm just telling you what I was told. I heard that one place today, but was also heard it's pretty in line with what everybody's doing.
We can make a lot of mistakes for $5 million.
Right.
Well,
It's
I'll tell
expensive.
you, when the errors and omissions, like you mentioned, I mean, you don't have somebody that's on top of those all the time, those can stack up and.
Yeah, but you know, really rightfully so, we choose an architect, right? You represent us, you build a new school,
Yep.
right? And if we go build that school and XYZ builds that school and something doesn't work, it's between you and them, because all we're doing is we're paying, right? So we told you to build a new school. So I think on the projects which we're gonna tie into other ones, I'm all about it. But I think the new building, I struggle with that because we're taking a brand new piece of land, putting a brand new building on it, everything's brand new. And we give the people final connections, so they take care of everything. And I'm not sure we need it up there. I guess that's my whole thought process. Because if it's not on the plan, then you guys are gonna pay for it. If they missed it on the bid, they're gonna pay for it. We're still out of it.
I think that's a fair point. I think from a new building perspective, what you gain with the construction manager is you get more expertise on the schedule and the cost estimate early on. They're already talking to subcontractors, so they know that this project's coming and they've got preferreds oftentimes. But I think that's a fair point, Jeff. I mean, the more complicated the project, the more opportunity there is for errors and omissions. And when you're tying into a building like this, it's gonna be more complicated.
Right.
I probably talked to the construction manager we had at the high school that oversaw the projects. Probably every day, about every other day, there was always something we were bouncing ideas off. He could go chase things down and get information. Otherwise, I think I would have sat in meetings nonstop while I was trying to run the building. So it was nice to have somebody there that be an advocate for the district, that had the district's best interest in mind. Because my training is not in construction or construction management. I appreciated having an advocate that was there representing our best interests and helping me problem solve.
I did a quick cost on gathering our last total project, we spent 14.5 million. And our construction manager, we spent about 10.8%.
So were those fees already built in to the numbers we're working with?
Yeah. So when you look at your budget and you look at what everything's gonna cost, they would be able to show you a breakdown of what the costs are with, I'm assuming they'll do cost plus. That's usually what they would do, percentage based. There's also other services they'll include in there, pre-construction services. So there'll be things, but like Gail said, if you break it down at the end, you'll be able to get a real number, which is kind of hard without having a line out breakout, which we would typically see before construction anyways. So you can see what the fee is.
In the fee compensation of the last contract we had, there was a lump sum fee for construction management, and then there's a direct personnel expense lump sum. And then there's a job site office support estimate amount, and then there was rates and additional things that could be added to those, but that was just the agreement that we signed.
Another thing to consider, Jeff, is when you go design bid build, if you're gonna go low bid, I mean, you're gonna get low bid contractors. So just something else to think about.
Yeah, we don't have a choice, but I mean, still. You know, on a new building, we should be. You know, to Vic's point, I get it, I get, we're trying to, you'd be foolish not to have it on this, you'd be foolish not to have it on the middle school, that, but build a new building, I'm not sold on that, but it gives us something to talk about, and I appreciate it.
When we bring in other options besides the de novo, do we have any like local options?
Yep. But I'd like Story Construction, did our last one, we did the last project. Another than Story, we got some other names.
We provided a list during the last meeting that we had as a facilities group. So some of the names are Cleaner Construction, Graham, De Novo, Carl A. Nelson, Boyd Jones, Estes, Story, McGough, and Stahl. And we've got projects that we've done with the majority of those companies in the past, and so those are conversations we're having as a small group.
But there's no low bid on this, this is we pick it.
We pick it.
Okay.
They come in, we pick it.
Okay.
That's where. My only question is, and I think I've asked this question before, is my concern is just, I want to go the route where, Christine, principals, Gail, that aren't, yes, they're involved, but I don't want them every day, putting extra work in, because we don't hire these folks to do construction or to do background checks for all
Right.
this all day. And I guess, so that's my question, the difference between the CMA at risk, CMA, and then just the design build, the GC route. I mean, which one of these would have the least burden on our staff?
So we did talk about that last meeting, and Gail was there as well to weigh in, and Gail stopped me whenever I go too far, but construction manager at risk is the easiest from a business manager standpoint within a school, because the construction manager holds all the contracts from the subcontractors. They're working through the pay apps, et cetera. When you do construction manager agency or design bid build, the owner, you hold the contracts. And so there's a lot of paperwork. And so what we talked about in our small group meeting is if this moves forward as a construction manager agency, during interviews or whoever you decide to go forward with, there needs to be expectations that there's going to be a lot of assistance towards scale to try to keep on top of that, whether that's weekly meetings or however that becomes, but to turn through those, because it is a lot of work, especially the way that this is really set up as 7 or 8 different projects. And so you've got 7 or 8 potential different sets of subs. Now, hopefully that's not the case if you are able to have different trades move from project to project, if it's scheduled that way, it could be less of a concern, but it's a lot of paperwork.
But you would authorize all payouts.
Yeah, I mean,
It comes back to you anyway.
It does.
Even if that middle guy's there or not there, it's still gotta come back to you.
correct.
And you've got to authorize it for pay to come from us, right?
Yes. But if you go CM at risk, the contractor holds that risk. They hold all those contracts.
But
So
what risk are we talking about? Because we're taking all the risk. We went out and bonded the money. It's $30
Correct.
million or whatever. We've already taken the risk.
Correct.
What risk are you talking about?
so that's just the term. So construction manager at risk. And the risk that they take is once you get through design development and you have a set of drawings that they can price and get in front of subcontractors, that they give you a price and say, this is the price. And as you move through construction documents into bidding, they have to hold that price for you, barring any changes that were owner directed. And that whatever those final numbers come out, they took that risk at that price. So that's what it means. It's just a different arrangement.
Like I said, my question, right, that you hit on it, Joe, I just, that with all the amount of subs we're gonna have on site and just all the back, that's my mind is saying, oh my God, it's a paper nightmare. But that's, I appreciate the answer. Well, we either need to vote, we gotta vote tonight on which, we either all gonna be in agreement, or we're just gonna not be able to vote on this tonight, but it's pretty much gonna be a GM route, a CMA route, or a CM at risk route. Is kind of what, there's 3 of us here, so I guess.
Christine, what do you want to do?
She recommends.
A couple
CMA.
things. One is I am recommending not only from the committee, but also myself, the CMA option. I also would love to see the board say, let's bring in, it doesn't really matter the number, but let's narrow down the big list from maybe in the small committee and bring that number 3, 4, whatever it is forward and ask these kinds of questions. I think you guys, what I love about this is the great questions we're asking. And as I had shared, some of the learning that I did today was about just about that percentage. While it feels a little scary when I heard that, but that's one way one company does it. Another company, kind of Gail just gave that breakdown example of how they line item this, and this, and it kind of comes out, what did she say, 10.9 to the same. So I think those are good questions to ask in bringing those people in. So that would be my recommendation. And I'm just going to be, the only other piece I'll add to that is you all know that we have had great experiences with De Novo. So I look forward to them also coming to the table and sharing how they can support us and all whatever other groups we decide to make sure we're making the best decision. And when we're talking about $5 million, I think in one of my conversations today, we want to ask questions around that. So I think that's where my recommendation is coming from.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the CMA route for our going forward.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Joe,
Josh,
thank you. Josh, is on?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I know Josh was on.
I need to hear it both.
Yeah,
I just-
Josh,
I just,
Did you hear that?
Let's, if you just got on, then you won't be able to vote.
Yeah,
I got on a few seconds ago, so I don't really know what's
Okay.
going on.
okay, perfect.
You can leave me out of
Thanks,
this
Josh.
one.
We don't need you there, Josh, you're good. Moving along, new business, consider approval for the 23-24 school fees and food service prices. Again,
Andrew,
Oh.
can I jump in for just a second before we get there?
Yes,
I just want to hear from all of you that, and you are, so we went with CMA and we're comfortable, we're not voting, but we're comfortable with the small committee bringing people forward and having that model talked about with each group. Is that correct?
I guess I don't want to speak unless you go first.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Jeff,
You're saying that the committee will recommend 3 to 5 of them?
Yes, and then the committee would listen to that group or we have them come to the board. I don't know how you want to do that.
No, I don't, no, bring it to the board. I don't want the committee to pick.
Yeah, so the committee can narrow
We can
the
bring us down to 3. can't we?
group and then we might have to have a separate meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I would agree. I think we need to go through and do a bid process on this or interview process, and I think we need to decide what's the best fit for the community and the school.
great. Thank you. I needed clarification on that, so thank you very much.
Yep.
And
No problem.
we'll work on that next. Thanks.
All right, consider approval for the 23-24 school fees and food service prices. Gail, you want to hit on that real quick, just the increases?
Yes, there's just, and these were recommendations by the directors of those departments. And as you can see, that page 2 was kind of our thoughts and our chicken scratches, how we got there. And basically, the increase of the lunch and those prices are basically just recommendations from Deb. The big change is $8 to our school fees from 92 to 100, and that is, we're gonna roll that padlock up. So everybody we don't have an additional padlock fee, it's gonna roll in, so we increased from 92 to $100 and eliminate the padlock. And then the band and vocal uniform cleanings, that was based on actual costs. So then that is how we came to the draft fees.
Any questions for Gail on that?
Make a motion to approve. Is that what you-
Yep. Do I have a second?
Wait a second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, next we need to get our top 5 priorities for the legislative session or of next year. I will just make a quick note. Tyler and I, if you see like number 5, number 7, Tyler and I both gave Gail what our votes were. So when you see 2 there, that was both Tyler and I giving our response. The other ones, obviously, we just voted different ones, but what we need tonight, we need to have 5 priorities to give to Gail to then turn into the state. So I guess I'll start off by saying school safety, mental health, and teacher recruitment, both Tyler and I agree were top priorities.
Mine too, yeah.
So I would say there's 3 right there, and then now we just need to find 2 additional ones on top of that, so. Jeff, what's 2 additional ones that you think?
The SSA and school funding policy.
Melissa, how about you?
What is the FFA?
That is
Oh,
the
that's
state
not-
supplemental aid. That's that every year we get from the state, 3.7% or 3.4%.
Never done.
Yeah, it's always up in the air.
That's why we need to be on it. There's gotta be a better system than we're using, I'm sure.
So when I'm picking 5 priorities, what does that like play out?
So
as?
then this is what then this, Gail, you want to explain this, you probably do better than I can. The state then uses this as their top priorities to then in negotiations with the lobbyists and everything else going forward. Is that correct?
Correct.
So pretty much they're trying to focus on all these issues that the schools got going, we're gonna
That's it.
focus, narrow it down to these 5.
Yeah, there's a list of 22 out there, so we're
Yeah.
just focusing on somebody from all across Iowa.
Then they take it all, they try to figure out what's the top priorities to focus their time
And
on.
so we have to agree on 5 as a board.
You got it. Yep.
Well, I'll say the SSA as well.
Okay,
What was the second one you said?
school funding policy.
What is that?
I would say, I believe it's probably just school funding as different forms of different funding that comes and funnels through the school, and it could be, you know, your school infrastructure save, or it could be, could deal with property taxes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
it was.
I think it's just different ways that funding comes to the school. It could be state aid and property taxes in different ways. That's what I'm assuming that.
And kind of the reason I picked that is with the new, what do they have it out there? You can take your money and run. What's that new thing they have?
Oh, the five school choice.
The voucher thing, I think that that's something we need to be very aware of. So that's why I chose it. And Andrew made me.
I mean, again, in my mind, pick school safety, mental health, or way above everything else.
Yeah,
That's kind of my,
that's-
that's why, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, where we pick, I mean, we can, but I would just say if we get to 5, send them in, but those are the 2 that are. Well, from where I sit, the most important. Josh, you got any thoughts?
No, I like those two as well. The only other question I had, maybe Dr. Trujillo understand this better, just with the AEA and making sure that that is taken care of well. Can you hear me? Sorry, there's a lot of background noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got you.
Yes, I will just chime in there absolutely with, the school funding piece, but the AEA is something that I always tell AEA, they need to call on me because I feel very passionately about how we fund AEA, and I'm very concerned about what that looks like moving forward. And just to wrap that around, like, well, what does that mean for us at Gilbert? And it means that there are a group that supports us in the area specifically of special education, but also through professional development. I mean, coaching, there's so many things that they help us with. They are an important agency, and coming from a state that did not have that, I know what it looks like without them, and we don't want to go there. So I would agree with you, Josh. It's a great question. It's an important component. I think any sort of school funding that you all talk about is extremely important with everything going on at the state level. And AEA is important, mental health is important, school safety. I mean, of course, all these issues are important, but I think what you guys have put down is really incredible, but I think AEA is an important one as well. So thank you.
Josh, you want to add AEA for your vote for one of the last ones?
I would like to add AEA, yeah.
You guys want to agree with that for our 5th one and take out school funding, replace that?
Sure.
Is that
Yep.
okay? Or
Yep,
is
yep,
it-
yep.
All right, let's do it. You got a 5, Gail?
Yes, I have school safety, number 5, number 7, mental health, number 11, teacher recruitment and licensure. And number 13, supplemental state aid, SSA. And
Number 10.
area education is number 10.
Perfect. Everybody agreement on that?
Yep.
Yep.
Do we have a motion to approve those top 5 priorities?
I motion.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Yep.
That took me off guard. Yep, opposed? All right, motion approved. Thank you much. Bakery dairy bids. I gotta open that up now. Can't remember what those were.
We basically,
Did you get any bids this
We
year?
got 2.
so, yeah, so Anderson, for milk, we did get 2, but it was Anderson Erickson, which is who we currently have.
Yeah.
And then the Bimbo is our only one for the bakeries.
Yeah, but it says raw milk.
Hope they don't
Yes.
quit.
Regular milk.
That's who I had in my store too.
Do we have a motion to approve the Anderson Erickson for the dairy and then Bimbo for the bakery?
So moved.
We have a second.
One second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Yep.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. The last, we have consider approval for the resolution fixing a date for a hearing on the proposed issuance of approximately $25 million in school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds. Hearing will be held August 14th, 2023 at 6 p.m. right here in the intermediate library.
So this starts our funding of the project. So this is the revenue sales tax save. And then the other portion of our funding will be in the form of the GO bonds that will go to be approved at the November meeting.
Yeah, it's a very good one. And for this, we need a roll call vote.
This requires a roll call vote.
All right, do we have, I guess we have a motion to approve.
Yeah, I'll make the motion as read.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, Gail, go ahead, a roll call vote.
Josh,
Yes.
Tyler's absent. Jeff,
Yep.
Melissa?
Yep.
Andrew?
Yes. All right, moving along to policies, we've got the first reading of some revised new board policies. Christie, you want to kind of maybe hit on both these sections of policies?
I do. A couple of things. Number one, our policy committee will be coming together again as we move forward into, if we go through tonight on first read, and then we'll be looking more closely and talking more about these for second and third read. There are some policies in here that I'm going to highlight for just a minute, but we may be looking at them when they come to second read and decide to go ahead and go a third read, because there's some meat, some pretty strong meat in some of these, and I want to make sure everyone's clear and having the opportunity to weigh in. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of them that I'm going to just mention, and it's really 605.10. It's around instructional materials and around library materials. There's quite a few in there. All of this came from the legislative updates. So if you're saying to yourself, gosh, didn't we just do a bunch of policies? Why are these in front of us? Well, these are the ones that have come through that need changes based on the legislative session. So there's a lot to talk about here, but for the most part, I want you to know the instructional materials selections, if you look at 605.02, there's library materials, inspections, what's on display, how to object to instructional materials and library materials. Also what's in our school libraries, 605.07. So what I want you to know about that is that there are recommendations for the policies based on the legislative changes. So we're going to have to do that piece. But within that, there's some work we have to do on our end as an organization. For example, listing all our library books, making sure everyone knows what's in our libraries. That's taking some time and effort on our end. Carrie Clark has been leading that with Lynn Reed and a team that she's working with. I'm putting some of those pieces in place. I'll be bringing that back to you more specifically when we go to second read on these. But I want you to know that we are in the process of putting some things in place, but the state has come out and said, the Department of Education, they will be providing no guidance on how to complete some of these things. For example, you'll find in one of the policies, the wording is books have to be age appropriate. Well, the question becomes, who determines what's age appropriate? And the state is saying, we're not going to help you determine or figure that out, is where we are at the moment. So the superintendents have been communicating about, well, what are you doing and what are you doing? And we'll be bringing that information and working with Carrie Clark on that and her team to make sure that we have our materials available. Parents understand the process if there's something they're not comfortable with. And we have a good process in place now. We'll make sure that it meets the policy, and I'll bring that information more clearly to you. We might have to pull some of these out in our next read, but I just wanted to highlight that. That's why these policies are here. They're legislative session. That's why we have more work to do in some of them based on the wording. And that's also why we're not getting a lot of guidance, unfortunately, from the Department of Ed on how to meet what the legislative session is asking us to do. So that's just an update, and the policy committee, Josh and Melissa, will be spending a little more time together as we kick off August, and we'll have more information for you after that.
Hey, Christine, real quick, you did mention you plan on meeting before the next school board session as a committee.
Correct.
Okay,
We'll be doing that.
awesome. Again, there's really no need to vote anything, it's just for the first reading, more to discuss next board meeting, but just be aware there's a lot of policies there to review. Any other questions for Christine on the policies? Gail, financial reports?
So, we are actually, the reports that are showing tonight are basically on cash basis. And, we will be, the process, we do cash basis, until mid-August, and we capture them. So we call this time accruals. I'll be doing a lot of accruals and capturing any June, or any fiscal year 23 business and, adding that in. So the first thing, as we look at the reports. So both on this column here, that's blank, is the accruals. So this total to your right, I know, it shows that we're trending, below or lagging in our revenue, but we need to keep in mind that in our accruals are going to be tuitions and funding from the state and federal government, and so there'll be a lot of activity these next couple, well, it's not a couple of months anymore, about 6 weeks. So the reports that I'm showing tonight is basically any activity and cash that was in the bank on June 30th. So lots of activity to happen going forward, and I'll bring that to you as our books close for the fiscal year. As we move forward in these reports, just a few that I want to highlight. I know I capture this every month, but just a reminder that our cash in the bank in all funds looks very strong, but I just want to remind you that our inability to do a cash reserve is very obvious. And that is a calculation based on our expenditures. And our expenditures have just been I'm going to say, our financial position has been very strong. And so since it's been very strong, we have not been able to do cash, do a total amount of cash reserve to replace cash. So like we've done in the past. So as our expenditures increase, hopefully our ability will be to be able to do a little bit more cash reserve to replace our cash that shows as compared to last year, we're about $1 million short than we were last year. Very strong position, but just as cash wise, it's less than we've had in the past. I have an area of concern here on the published budget. The non-instructional programs, which is also AKA nutrition, we are really close to 100% spending, and with our books still open, this is an area of concern. And when I say concern, it's not devastating or anything, but it's really close. And with knowing that we still have 6 weeks for the books to open, and really how many expenditures are out there, all of our revenue is pretty well captured. It's just the expenditures is what's out there. We're only at 2.3% that we can go before we reach 100%. Now, if we happen to go over, because this budget needed to be amended before June 1st, and we did not, so it would just cause a comment in our audit. That's all it. We should have amended the budget when we knew we were going to go over. So that is just a little area there. And the area here I want to talk about on the couple side of it is this building repair and maintenance, it shows that we're way over, but I wanted to bring to your attention that we have 2 insurance claims that are approximately $160,000 out there. So not all those expenses are for new projects. All of our repairs from the hail and wind damage claims have been running through this. And so not only will we be capturing those expenses for fiscal year 23, but it does also going to roll over to fiscal year 24 because we still are getting the contractors in and replacing our repairs and our equipment for those 2 claims. And so that'll be exact in 2 years. So that overage is not all new projects. And then as we go through the activity fund, just keep in mind, we have a lot of cleanup during this time to clean things up and report them in the approvals to get it in the reports in the position that we can close, and I can meet the deadline of September 15th for my certified annual report and my other reports. So we're still collecting revenue and we still are collecting bills fiscal year 23. Nutrition, even though our revenue was less than a year ago, and even though our expenditures were a little bit more than a year ago, the cash balance is a very healthy position. So that is something to be proud of. And our negative meal account balances ended just at $144. And that is not students. I'll just mention that.
What?
Not students.
The teachers?
Staff.
Yeah. Let me.
Yeah, we gotta look around the room sometimes. Not me either.
If you remember, we did the flexibility.
Yeah, that's okay.
$1,000 for that flexibility fund to take care of only students.
Yeah.
So, and other than that,
Good.
that's our position on our June cash. Lots of activities going on in the finance department.
Yeah, very nice.
Year end.
Short some property tax still?
We're still collecting it, so we have a little bit more collection of property tax, and then we also, but also in there, I will make journal entries to move some funding is also with property taxes, so some of those journal entries will need to be made too. So
Okay, okay.
all that will be happening in the goals, so.
Okay. A nice job, I guess.
Good job, Gail. Any other questions for Gail? All right, moving along. Consent agenda. Anything need to be discussed, pulled out?
I want to discuss A.
We'll then discuss it.
Okay. This is kind of towards you guys over here. If and Christine, since you're not here. If we have early retirement, that helps, somebody that wants to retire or gets close. When we can't find teachers, is there a point to keep offering this? I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but we can't get teachers, so why do we want to have people quit early? Am I looking at it wrong, or is it? I guess that's the concept. I guess I want to know. Am I wrong? Do they deserve it? Is it part of the deal? It's always has been. I don't buy those things, but
Jeff, let me jump in here, and I'm going to ask Gail, just because, and maybe Gail, this was here before you came. Can you give us any historical information around how this came about, or
So,
were
okay.
this prior to you?
So early retirement plan was in place before I arrived. So I don't know what the initial purpose or reason was to put it in. I would, in my past history of being in a different district, it was a way of saving money. You have an experienced teacher leaving, bringing in a new teacher is a cost savings to the district. That is the primary purpose of this. But it does, to get to your point, it does look different in today's world. But it comes to the board every year because it is not an ongoing expectation is in the board's hands because it's not a ongoing retirement plan. And it's a benefit that the board approves and provides.
So early retirement, what's that mean? So I can't retire normally, so I want early retirement. What are my criteria versus early retirement?
This policy is a standalone policy outside of items or any
Okay.
school and retirement. So this policy is you have to have two components. You have to be at least 55 years old because we take it out of management fund. So that's the requirement. 55, and you have to have 15 years of experience, continued experience at Gilbert.
Okay.
If you qualify for those two, then it takes, and the benefit is 48% of your last base salary. And a special pay plan stipend at the end of June 30th. So the purpose is when it was put in place, I'm sure it was for the cost savings of a way to save the money.
And Jeff, if I may, to your point about, it's difficult to get new staff and we're always wanting to do our very best and have the best people in place. We have been, in my, time here, we've been very fortunate in the sense that when we have someone that's been incredible, it's been in our district for a long time and has taken this option, we've been very fortunate to bring in new talent that maybe has had less experience, but also it has a passion for their industry and are excited. So it's given us some opportunities to meet some new people. And we've been very, very fortunate in times when people have come forward and utilized this and we thought, boy, how are we ever going to replace that person? Of course, there's no replacing them, but it has given us an opportunity to meet some new people with not as many years of service who want to move into the Gilbert district and share their talents with us. But it's an interesting question that you ask, and I appreciate the background, Gail. Thank you for that. But it is something that is at the board's discretion.
We opened up October 1st for the application process, and it ends January 15th. So it's early enough that we know pretty much starting in October until the window closes in January 15th, that we get out and we recruit and we start the recruiting process.
And it's just 5 people. It
It's
can
five.
only be 5.
Yeah.
District one.
I do that, yeah.
So it could be support, it could be teachers,
Yeah.
administrator.
I understand when they get this big jump on fire.
Well, sure.
And then we know somebody's leaving in October.
Yeah.
Versus waiting until May. But we've also been very fortunate to be a destination school, where we're still getting a reasonable amount of applicants compared to other districts. We're struggling in some of the areas that are hard to find, but everybody.
Right,
I've heard
right.
they said, we're doing pretty well.
So what do you guys think?
Talking to them or us?
Yeah.
I would assume they're gonna say, don't take away a benefit from us.
That's
I don't want to
Okay.
speak for them,
Okay.
but
Okay.
That is what I would say.
Okay.
I would think it is a benefit,
yeah.
Okay.
you know,
it's great.
it's a.
And I think if it gets to a point of we are having major issues in
Yeah.
finding employment, I think, yeah, we can pull
Yeah.
back, we can limit it to 1 or 2. But I think we're not there yet.
It honors loyalty, it honors.
Yeah, I think it's a great.
Yeah, but so does
Well,
retirement.
and I think that it used to be,
Save us money.
I think we actually upped the amount of service over time. Like,
Yeah.
I think it used to be less years and then we
12
upped.
years. and then-
Yes, and then we upped it, so
Yeah.
because of that.
And
Yep.
so many. It was
But
a-
I
Sounds like Social Security.
also, yeah, if I may, the other thing to consider is if this is something that the board wants to think about or consider changing for next year, we want to make sure we communicate that to
Oh,
people,
yeah.
because, early enough that you might say, hey, I'll take advantage of it this year because it's not going to be there next year. It's going to look different. I mean, we don't want to give that sense now, but I'm saying if that is something the board wants to have more discussion on, we need to make sure so that people can make plans accordingly. Just a thought.
Does this impact the union contract at all?
No, it's board policy, board control. And the other thing I wanna, just from just seeing the applications and working with the staff. Majority of the staff, because there's that gap usually before they turn our Medicare eligible. It's a stipend that most of them use to cover health insurance. Until they reach age 65.
Josh, did you have something too you want to hit on quick?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the athletic trainer agreement, just one portion of that.
Yep, go right ahead.
Under emergency medical transport service. There's just kind of a verbiage thing in there that I think has been missed on. Maybe on their side or whoever wrote the contract, but it explains emergency medical transport service and then uses in paraphrase EMT service. EMT means emergency medical technician, which is what we currently provide. We do not currently provide an emergency medical transport service. That would be an ambulance at the football game, ready to immediately transport someone. We don't provide that. That is a big difference between having a first responder sitting there and having an ambulance. I'm okay with the contract moving forward. Just understand that if something happens and people look at the policy and they say, hey, you have an agreement that says you're supposed to staff a transport service, whether that was a typo or using the wrong verbiage, it could come up if there was an ambulance delay or if there was, anything like that. We do see some ambulance delays in the county quite a bit. So I personally am getting kind of hung up on that word. Like I said, we can go ahead and approve it, but I'm not opposed to the school paying for an ambulance to sit at the football games either.
I think now's the time to clean it up, though. If you're right, I mean, I don't know the difference, Josh, and that's why we all bring something to the board. But now's the time to clean it up. It's early now.
I think it would be important to talk to McFarland and have them clarify it and say, what is it you're asking us to do? Are you asking us to have first responders at the emergency medical technician level? Or are you asking us to provide a transport unit?
We can follow up with that and then bring this back to the August meeting. Because I think we need to make sure that that's clear.
We can hold out until next month on that. So
Yeah.
I guess Josh, again, just be clear. So in the consent agenda, we're gonna pull out item B, the 3-year athletic trainer services agreement for McFarland Clinic. So we will not be voting on that as part of the consent agenda tonight.
Correct. I would assume that we'll probably have to get on it right away next meeting because that would impact our football season.
Correct.
Yeah.
We'll get it done right away. And I may reach out to you, Josh, just to make sure I get that all clear and the verbiage correct. So that's good.
All right, with that adjustment, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
A motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Calendar, we've got August 14th is our next regular meeting. We'll also have the public hearing prior to the meeting that night, which we just voted on tonight. September 11th is our September meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.